Okay everyone, it's Dale coming back from DHT. Today we're talking about tomatoes. We'll give you 5 tips on growing the best tomatoes you've ever grown in your life. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Okay, tip number 1, plant them deep as you possibly can, and prune all the leaves that's underground. You only need to let the 2 top leaves on the plant for photosynthesis. Everything below surface will actually root out, and it'll make a stronger plant from the start. So if you don't start good, you won't end good. You got to start it right. So you want to go as deep as possible, but I prefer to have plants 8 to 10 inches tall when I start, and I want to plant them all the way down but about 2 inches, or whatever I can get the top 2 leaves off of. Other than that, prune them off and put them in the ground. Tip number 2, tomatoes are heavy feeders, extremely heavy feeders. They like lots and lots of organic matter. The more the merrier. And you may need to top dress them throughout the season too, but when you start them out, you need to dig your hole 2 inches deeper than what your plant needs it to be, and then throw a handful of composted chicken manure, blood and bone meal, some other trace minerals, and then plant your tomato. And then when you're done planting, pack it in good. Pack it in good, and then put some around the top edge too. So you want to mulch it with that in there as well, but don't let it touch the stem, or it could burn it if it's not completely composted. So you want to make sure your compost is fully biodegraded, and if it's not, keep it away from the stem. Tip number 3 is watering. Proper water from start to finish. Throughout the season, you need to have it watered properly. Whenever I dig my hole and throw my organic matter in the bottom of the hole, I like to fill that hole clear full of water, let it drain. It may take 5 minutes for it to drain out, but if it does, it does. Go about digging your next hole, whatever. So when you put it in, you got to make sure it's watered, and that'll get the surrounding soil wet is what that'll do, because a lot of times it's dry. So you need to make sure that's wet, and when you put your plant in, pack it in good. And then when you put your organic matter around the top, as discussed in tip number 2, water in good again. Because what that'll do is make sure that your soil is compacted around the roots, because your roots, if they touch air for too long, it'll actually burn the root off and cut it. It'll prune the roots. It's called root pruning. So you want to make sure you water it in good. And throughout the season, you want to make sure you water the soil, not the plant. And what I mean by that is you need to water the soil around the base of the plant. Don't overhead water your tomatoes, because a lot of times that'll cause them to get blight. In the area we live in, we'll get late blight more than early blight, but some places will get early blight. It's due to humidity and the leaves not getting dried off. So you want to make sure your tomatoes, when you water them, you don't want to get water on the tomato itself, on the leaves of the plant. You want to make sure you get it on the soil throughout the season. Tip number 4, trellis and prune. This is kind of a twofer. It kind of falls back to water, but it's talking about it in a different kind of sense. So what I do when I grow my tomatoes out through the season is I trellis them from above, and I'll drive 10-foot stakes in the ground, and I'll put a pole across the top, and I'll drop a string down from that pole, and I'll weave my tomato plant around that string. And every time I prune it, or every week or whatever, I'll weave it however I need to. And when I do that, so I get good airflow around there. Because if you put it in a cage, put a tomato cage over it, they're kind of shaped like this. So all your leaves are kind of bundled up in that cage, and they can't get no airflow around them. So that'll go back to the watering, keeping the water off the leaves. That don't let the airflow get around them. So they stay moist longer when it rains or it's humid out or whatever. And like I said earlier, in our climate, it's pretty muggy in the wintertime. So you want to keep them as dry as possible. So you need to keep them trellised from above, not a cage from below. And by the pruning sense, what I do is everything from the lowest fruit truss down, I prune all the leaves off all summer long. And a lot of times, you don't have to do this, but I usually do is in the crotch, the suckers. And what the sucker is the main stem comes up here, and you get a leaf node that comes out there. You'll actually get a whole nother plant that comes out of that crotch right there. That's called a sucker. You want to pluck them off. If you don't pluck them off, it'll lower your yield, and you won't get the airflow that you need for your plant to do as good as possible. And I don't know about you all, but I like to grow tomatoes. I like to grow lots and lots of tomatoes, and I like growing big tomatoes. I don't like to eat them, but I like to grow them because guys like Jeremy that's filming this for me loves tomatoes. Here's tip number 5, the moment you've all been waiting for. Tip number 5 to grow the best tomatoes you've grown in your entire life is going to happen in the 2022 garden season if you follow all 5 tips that I've given you. So, tip number 5 is start with good plants. That's not a given like most people think it is. When you go to the big box stores, I'm not going to mention their names, but you know who I'm talking about. The plants that they get are they actually have chemicals put on those plants so they don't get real tall. And they do that so they can store them longer in the stores. And a lot of the bigger nurseries do that. Even in the area we live in, a lot of the nurseries do that. So if you don't start with good plants, you're not going to end with good plants. I've never experienced this before, but I did a little bit of research on this when I was figuring out this video. They claim if you take the plant out of the pot, if you buy it from a big box store, and you take it out of the pot, and you rinse all the soil off of it, and you rinse the roots, wash it off, you can actually get that chemical off. But if you don't do that, your plants ain't going to grow. They're going to stay short, and you're not going to get much fruit. Personally, I prefer starting them from seed, and I always have started my tomatoes from seed. But you can buy them from a local nursery, a small mom and pop shop. You don't need to go to the big box store or a big nursery, or start them from seed. If you ask your nursery if they put chemicals on their plants, they should tell you. Some of them may hide it from you, but they should tell you. So ask if you don't know, ask them. But they do put, and they do it on a lot of plants, not just tomatoes. So make sure that when you're buying plants that they don't have that growth inhibitor put on them or they won't grow. All right, so there you have it, 5 tips for growing the best tomatoes you've ever grown in your entire life. It's gonna happen for you in the 2022 season. So if you like this video, please like this video. If you aren't already subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. I will demonstrate every last tip that I've just talked about in this video this spring throughout the summertime. So if you want to follow up and follow along, please do so. And until we meet again, take care and God bless. Where is my range at, though? Seriously.
So go all the way out?
Because I want my tomatoes this freaking big whenever I put them in the ground.